Welcome to the podcast Who Am I? In this episode, Steve and I discuss the topic of freedom further. We talk about how our concept of freedom is sometimes misleading. This is exemplified by the notion that more choice equals more freedom. I hope you enjoy our discussion. So we recently both watched this video of a TED Talk where this lady who is a researcher talks about the illusion of choice. But first of all, she makes the audience aware how important choice is to us. And it seems to be especially this way in the Western world, where we equate, the amount of choices with the amount of freedom we have. And she also interviewed people from other cultures, like in China or Eastern Europe, where that paradigm is a bit different. For example, in East Asia, people are more reliant on mentors and they want to honor them rather than doing everything themselves and learning from their mistakes. They want more guidance. What else did she say?
Oh, it was, again, there's so much good stuff. So like where to even begin? So she was talking about, as you just said, the cultural difference between, very much a Western and Eastern. And she even did a European as well, analysis about how, post-communism countries had a different perspective on choice, because she said she went to their like houses or had them in the lab or whatever for a study and offered them 7 different brands of like drink. So like it's a fizzy drink and it's all like, Coke, Pepsi, 7-Up, Sprite, whatever, all these different ones, and asked them which one they would choose. And they said, well, it doesn't matter. It's all just soda. And she said that she wasn't expecting that. She said that she was like, wow, okay, hang on a minute. That's interesting data, because the choice there is for us, for people that are used to this cultural aspect of everything is a choice, and that's a good thing. They were like, well, no, it's just, why are you giving me all this soda when it's just the same? I just take one and that's what I'll have. And it was, again, fascinating when she then added in, she said she added in like a jug of water and a tea. And these people would say they then had 3 choices. They had soda, water, or tea. And it was just like, whereas we would say, you have 7 different choices with the cola plus the 2 other ones. And so, there's, and that's because of where they come from. Again, the cultural difference, where to them, having too much choice, they perceived it as not necessary. It was just too much. Whereas America and maybe ourselves and other countries, we value and get, I guess, self esteem almost, or happiness or pleasure or whatever like phrase it is, from having the concept of having choice. And she goes on to discuss, like the pros and cons in a very, we can link it like when you do the
description
setup, definitely link it in, because I think it's one that everyone should actually watch. It was brilliant. And I've always been fascinated by this, like this concept of, again, choice and what is choice and what isn't choice. Because often the concept of who I am and my desire for happiness, often not being happy for me is when I feel like I don't have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you feel about that or not.
Yeah, I've thought about it too. Let me first talk about another culture. Before I get to that, so when the Berlin Wall fell, the commercialism of the West, West Germany was overwhelming for East Germans. So they would go to shops and just not know where to begin, because the selection was just too big for them. They were used to having just one version of each product, no competition, no brands, no variety. And so I sometimes wonder, was their life worse for that? I mean, obviously, East Germany had lots of restrictions in how they could live. The people were spied on. Religious freedom wasn't really there. Religion was tolerated,
Yeah.
but not really allowed in communism. So anyway,
Yeah.
and on the other hand, is what the West has so much better.
Yeah.
People like the variety and the amount of choices, because then they feel free. They have lots of, let's say, clothes or shoes to choose from. And I went shopping with a friend once, and after he had just broken up with someone, and he felt the need to redefine himself, to not be to not have his identity linked to this girl that he no longer had in his life. And he told me this explicitly. He was aware of that need, and so
Yeah.
he wanted to try out new clothes and shoes. And I thought, really? I mean, that is what makes up your identity. I guess that's part of it. Fashion is important to a lot of people, um, because you identify with a group who has the same taste, I guess. Sometimes you will even sacrifice your taste just to belong to a group. But those things are so superficial. The people bond over
Yeah.
those things because they are the first thing you see. I think it's much more
Yeah.
rewarding and fulfilling when you can bond over inner values, but they are hidden, and you need to really get to know someone. You need to have uh, very little prejudice before you can even get to that point, and then you can
Yeah.
build friendships over that.
Yeah. I guess it's how again, it's the definition of ourselves, isn't it? It's our self-identity. And when they were talking about when this, I don't know if she's a professor or what her qualifications are, but this lecturer was talking about, um, again, we try to self-identify, and that's where we get our value from, is having our own identity through, whether it's through clothes or, again, our personal, even just our ability to choose, not just the clothes, but the ability to choose different clothes, and lots of them. That's where we tend to get, in a cultural sense, not us personally, a cultural sense, our identity. Whereas again, the East Asia, very much they want to honor their parents or their mentors, and that's where their identity comes from. Their identity comes from, they can proudly say that they brought respect and honor and um, well, yeah, those things to that person and themselves. So it's a group identity almost,
Mhm.
in a way. It's as you say, the core values. And the lecturer was talking about how we can learn from both aspects.
Yeah,
And toward the end, her conclusion, I think, yeah, was very much to do with that, and how the translation, she called it, things not getting lost in translation, but actually being a benefit and evolving in translation.
yeah.
When you,
Prejudice can lead us to just uh, not value anything that foreign cultures have,
yes,
just because it's different. Um, but in the West, we like to sometimes define ourselves and increase our independence by going against the norm, like by rebelling against parents,
yeah,
other social leaders. And that is just counterdependence. It's not independence, it's just a different form of dependence. If I do the opposite of whatever you want me to do, then what I do depends on what you want me to do. And therefore, it's not something I chose for myself or created. And so that's just an illusion of freedom again. And that's what this episode is all about.
yeah. And yeah, that illusion can be difficult because again, we place so much learning to accept that it's, because in many ways, um, again, cultural or an illusion can be difficult. It freaks people out because they're just like, no, I must have the control. I must have and I've been through that. I've been through that process myself personally of of course we want to have control over our lives and have control over our destinies, but often we had limited control. We have control over certain things, and then factors come in that we can't foresee, or we start to realize that a lot of what we believe, because again, identity is based on beliefs, a lot of what we believe is actually false, or it's not right or wrong, it's just different. That's one of my key phrases that I've used throughout this whole podcast, is that Western people think that, generally, again, generalization here, think that having all this choice is the right thing, that's what's right. And then in the other cultures, they'll believe their way is right. And it's coming to the understanding that it's just different. It's actually just different way of perceiving things.
Yeah. Changes can be frightening. The brain likes routine. So when you do the same thing every day, like, I don't know, driving in your car to your office, starting the day with a coffee, greeting your colleagues the same way every day, then that reinforces the neural pathways in the brain, and it also excludes all alternatives. So, or like those things go hand in hand. Strengthening a pathway and weakening all alternative pathways is kind of the same process. And
stability, isn't it? Stability.
Yeah. It gives us, the stability feels nice in the moment because of, I guess, dependability, predictability. It gives us something to do.
Nothing to fear, isn't it? There's nothing to fear either, because you know exactly what's happening. It's not as scary as the unknown.
But every so often, our routine, our rhythm gets turned upside down by outside influences, by factors that were not part of the pattern that we built over time. And what impact does that have on us? Does it lead to an identity crisis, an insecurity that we suddenly don't know where to go from here, and we just accept any and all advice from people who have an air of leadership and confidence? Because that is definitely not healthy, and I don't want that. So I try to be careful to not make any one pattern or process my identity, but have constant progress be my identity. I want to constantly learn, not necessarily the way I did at university, but also intellectually, but also emotionally, train my intuition, review my inner values, just constantly be open to change. And that is something that will keep you on your toes. It's something that requires constant effort. Because we are inherently lazy, I think. We don't do, if we're not forced to change, then we usually won't, unless we take conscious control.
It's picking the easy path. Again, that avoidance of fear and difficulty. So having to take conscious control is so important, so that when we go through a scenario that is change, that is scary, we can actually adapt in a healthy, or respond in a healthy, non-crisis way. Because when these things happen, we just go into panic mode, or our nature tends to go into some sort of panic mode. But if we, again, choose to have a conscious adaptation as these things happen, they eventually become part of our nature. Again, that's the process we seem to be going through, you and I, as the sort of, again, the who am I, self-discovery, is that we're going through this conscious process of adopting many ways of adapting to scenarios. So when something happens that is different, we can just already have a bunch of either coping mechanisms or strategies to realize that even if we don't have a strategy or a coping mechanism, we can get through this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Does that make any sense?
No, yeah, I get it. I mean,
Okay.
I hope our listeners do. Um, we all know those people who could never consider living in another country, or who don't even want to visit an entire continent. And
Yes.
I can't fathom that. I want to live in at least one other country in my
Yeah.
life,
Yeah.
when it's possible again.
Let if yet if yeah yet if you threw them into another country and culture, for a little while they'd have like a crisis and be difficult, but then they would adapt and they would thrive. And it'd take them. It might take some people years.
Mhm.
It might take someone a month, but that change and that stuff and would actually benefit them. But again, we
Right,
have to all kind of come to it in our own
right. And
terms and our
so,
own ways.
so how open are people to those adventures and challenges? Because I am open to them to a certain degree. Obviously, I have limits too. But I remember 4 years ago, I did a lot of traveling, and I would be really afraid right before the time was to catch the train, to go to the airport, whatever. Um, and I would be nervously packing, not really being myself, and just trying to suppress the fear, so that I would just get on the plane, and then that was my only goal. Um, if the planning if planning the trip was too much, and and I felt that it was about to stop me from going at all, I would try to minimize the the hurdle by just booking the flight, booking the accommodation, and go. Nothing else. Did not plan anything. Not try to meet anyone. Uh, Not even get the currency I needed for the country. Just the minimum and go, because
And
that was sometimes the only way possible to make those
yeah,
trips happen. But then when I got
and
home, I had a huge increase in self-confidence.
yeah, and I think that's kind of what some of what the I wish we had learned her name before we the podcast for what this what one was talking about is that actually because you limited the choices to the ones that you just needed to do,
Hmm.
um, instead of having too many, because too many overloads the brain or overloads the psyche, and you were able to realize that and go, okay, actually having so much choice actually is a negative thing, um, and therefore you limited it to what you could be dealt with, and then just did it. And I think that that's some of the points that she was getting across was that um, Western culture or just cultures that adopt the ultimate, have all the freedoms and the choices in the world, suffer from. We suffer from this overload, um, where we get lost in the fact we can choose rather than the fact that should we be choosing or what is healthy to be choosing.
Yeah, that was a huge takeaway for me as well from the talk. Um, and yes, we have so many options. It's just like information overload. There's so much information out there that it's difficult to distinguish the lies from the truth. And so, with parenting as well, you don't want to give your children too many freedoms, because they won't learn the necessary discipline. I mean, that's one reason I can imagine. I'm not a parent yet,
Yeah.
but them, you want to create challenges for them, I guess, that are manageable, and
Yes.
and then when they are able to get their chores organized, for example, or manage their time so that they can have fun and finish their homework on time and stuff like that. That seems like trivial to us now, are major challenges, and it's just a progression. I mean, I'm in the same boat. I am trying to become an entrepreneur, and I hate bureaucracy and having to trust uh, what's it called, the Department of Finances and stuff like that. Um, but I get advice from people who have been there, who have been through that hurdle, and are willing to help me for a price, usually. But
Yeah. Set services and all that and goods and yeah, it's all part of
so there is a purpose to limitation. We just hate it when we're in that situation, when we are being
yeah.
limited. But once we're in a position of leadership, we see the need for it. I once tried to organize a game in a gym with, let's say, 30 young boys. And I got them,
Yep.
they were just loud and rowdy, and I couldn't get them to just agree on what to play in the first place. And so I just decided, let's try to start by dividing into two teams. So I had them count 1, 2, 1, 2. And after a lot of back and forth and some shouting even, we managed to divide into teams, and then we still couldn't agree on what to play. So we ended up playing chair football, which was the default, just the most popular game for them.
Yes.
And I thought it would be impossible for 30 people to play it in one gym, but it was better than the chaos that we had before. And from the chaos came frustration, like does it have to be this complicated? Can't we just play something? And
Yeah.
so I just let them play chair football, and that was fine. I was maybe 20 at the time, and it was disappointing how little we got achieved. But it was also an interesting experience, and I was happy that we were able to do anything.
Yeah.
and have fun in the end.
Yeah, sometimes just just doing something is better than just trying to figure out what to do. Like, I used to overanalyze every choice I made. Like, from the age of about 18 to like 25, it was insanity. It was just like, oh, is this the right choice? Is that the right choice? How many variables are in this choice? How can I calculate the probabilities of these choices? Why isn't there a scale for this? And it's just ridiculous. Looking back, that was my identity. That's who I was. And I think a lot of people that I know suffer from overthinking. And I've gone to the other extreme as a result to see how that works, where I just don't make many choices and just go with the flow and see how that goes. And then again, depending on the specific scenario, I can apply the overthinking, or I can apply the actually, does it really matter? Like, does it matter which game we play? Again, like your example, does it matter, trying to give an example of my own choices in the past and stuff. Again, which degree I do, or which job I go for, or should I go spend time with this person or that person, or should I try and date, get to know this woman more or that one more? There's so many different things that you just over process. And the irony is, going back to the whole concept of illusion of choice, things just work out eventually anyway. They may go like really badly to start off with or something, but it always seems to just link back to what maybe it was meant to be, or what is more healthy. Like, it's hard to know the terminology to use, but it just works back to a happier scenario. For example, used to live in Scotland, as you know, and that's where I wanted to be. That's always where I wanted to live. I didn't want to live anywhere else. Felt I was happy there. I was happy there. Health stuff was obviously bad, but I just assumed that's where I'd always be. And then things changed, and ultimately I had to move down here to be with my parents, and down to England, be looked after. And that, I hated that so much, that lack of choice that was taken away from me, is how I felt at the time. And I look back at all the positives that have come from being down here, while still having all the positives that I had in Scotland. I still have those relationships with those people up there. I still keep in touch with them. And I wouldn't, in hindsight, I wouldn't go, hey, let's go back to where I was and maintain having a choice, let's say, because I would still continue to choose to stay there. I wouldn't have had all the experiences that I had here. So life, sometimes the universe, God, however you want to define the overarching scenario, things just seem to lead us where we are meant, or where will be most beneficial for us. Again, the problem is there's usually a lot of pain in the process. That's the hardest part, is that usually there's a lot of difficulty, a lot of struggle. And that can come from, again, the desire for choice, or again, it can come from physical, mental health, because that in itself limits our choices, doesn't it? You know, having difficulties with mental health or physical health.
Yeah. Yeah, you triggered several thoughts there. I'll start with this one. Stephen Covey said that when you find yourself in a position of very few choices, very few paths you can take, then just do your best to make a choice. Sometimes
Yes.
any choice is better than no choice. And with time and effort and discipline and commitment, the spectrum of choices will broaden, and so you can work yourself out of this hole by applying your powers, and the powers that humans have is to make their own choices. uh, Often we don't decide what the options are that we can choose from, but just how to approach the situation with the options we have, and then they will automatically grow. And when I say power, I don't mean it like force, or overpowering someone else. It's just you will create freedom, because you will start to see more who you are. You will find more purpose in your life. I'm still in the process, so I can't really describe it like a guru could, but it's important to make use of the little power we have, and with time and patience, that power will grow.
Yeah, I think that's the key you should hit on just there, is the time and patience. Like, we all have this illusion that things have to happen at a certain point. Well, not all of us, but like a lot of us have this illusion that, okay, we make this goal, we make this choice, and it has to happen by this point. And like, that's unhealthy. To me, I used to do it all the time, and it's very unhealthy. It just let it happen when it happens, but just keep working towards it. A lot of the time you can't force it. A lot of the time that you have to just wait for things, or take baby steps, because if you try and take a big jump, you'll feel like you failed, then you won't actually try again. So you just try a little bit at a time. And
But
I think
do you think it's good to have a long-term goal, an ideal in the back of your mind, even if you have no idea whether you will achieve it 100% and when, but just a direction?
Yeah, I think yes. Like I think because we're on a metaphorical, sometimes almost like a journey in just life, different paths that we could take for both physical and, emotional. I think that having overarching goals is probably good. Like, again, it gives that sense of purpose, that sense of direction. I think that's very healthy. I think that's a lot of us need that, or we lose our self-worth or self-esteem. But that in a way is kind of a choice. Like, that in a way is because how do you value yourself and who you are? Do you value it on the achievement of goals, or do you value it on the fact that you're already an amazing person, who you are, and your being just now and who you are is already enough, and is already good, and is already wonderful, and is already incredible? Do you need that overarching goal? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I would say personally, most people do, yes. But actually, when you learn to let go of all those goals, just for a while maybe, and realize that it's okay just to be, like, again, who you are, the value you have as a person isn't defined by anything except yourself.
Okay, that makes sense too. That was very different from the answer I would have given to that question, but that's a good insight. So would you say that this journey is one of understanding what is already the case, kind of finding yourself rather than trying to achieve something, or changing yourself into something?
I think so, yeah. Like, I used to always want to change. I used to always want to be something better or something more. And the last few years, I've just been like, I think the biggest thing that helped me realize it, again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong or whatever, I'm just saying it's a way that I've adopted that makes me happy and feel healthier in myself, is the health stuff, like being limited and not being able to help people. So my identity was very much based on helping people. Like I would, that was always my goal. Like I really enjoyed being around people, obviously, but also helping them when they needed me. If they needed me at 3 o'clock in the morning and to like go and pick them up from somewhere, or they were having a crisis or whatever, I could be there. That was part of who I wanted to be. I can't do that now. There's no way in this universe that can ever happen because I'll get really ill and really sick. So I can't do that. And so my self-worth and value just plummeted. And then I moved down here and during the peak of the health stuff and realized people, even again up in Scotland and down here, still liked me and valued me as a person, even though I wasn't as reliable or as there for them as I had previously been. And it opened my eyes to realize that actually, yeah, just me as a person, who I am, is fine. It's more than fine. It's amazing. And that's why I try and tell people like all my friends and stuff, when they talk about, again, progression or whatever else, I'm like, that's good, that's healthy, that's awesome. But just don't forget that actually what you are now is incredible. And if it wasn't, then people wouldn't value you. Like you value yourself, hopefully, but me as a person would avoid you if you weren't actually a good person or a nice person. Like that's my nature, is to not necessarily be around people that I find unhealthy, for example, like in terms of like for happiness. Whereas I spend time with people that bring me happiness and who are good people and who have incredible value just in and of themselves.
That's great. I think pretty much everybody, the majority of people, are worried about how they are perceived, and they want to keep up this charade of being the person that they expect other people for them to be, or that they expect other people want them to be. But actually, when we stop trying to be the person, to be that artificial person, and are honest to others about who we are, they will like us even more.
Yeah.
And if they crazy. It's like a huge risk, but it works.
Yeah. And if they don't like us, then it doesn't matter. They can go off and do their own thing. There'll still be people around that will value and realize the goodness of you. We are not defined by other people's like perception of us. Like we shouldn't be. We shouldn't be defined by other people's perceptions of us. Like I was talking to my brother recently, and he was like, "Oh, I feel like when I chat to you, like I just feel I can be myself. Like I can be dorky and I can be like silly, and it's just so good and nice to be able to do that. There's no falsity there. And like you said, the honesty, to be able to be honest about who we are. And I think that's another thing that I've learned, is that it's okay to just be Steve. I'm an absolute dork that's like silly and ridiculous and nonsensical most of the times. And I've hidden that at various points in my life. And those are the points when I've been unhappy, or more unhappy, or like less happy, or whatever the terminology is. And so I think that's what I've tried to install in other people when I spend time with them. Like the games group that I run, like we haven't been able to do much of it because of COVID and stuff, but when there, I want it to be a place that people can just come and just be themselves. Like, because that should be like what life is like all the time, isn't it? You know, it should be like that. But for some reason, there's white noise everywhere, and we get caught up in so much stuff.
This reminds me of a topic I was thinking about bringing up. Let's go there.
Go for it.
So yesterday, I took a risk and opened up to someone about something that I had thought about, and then I just did it. I talked to him after church and said, I noticed you sometimes have a critical opinion of how people and governments are handling the pandemic. What makes you talk that way, or what makes you see the situation that way? You know, that dividing up families is going too far, for example.
Yeah.
And then he looked at me a bit puzzled, and I said, I don't mean how dare you, but
Yeah.
just what information are you basing those things on? Like I
Yeah.
wasn't even telling him my opinion. I just wanted to see,
Intrigued.
will
Yeah.
he open up, because he was wearing a mask at church. He's abiding by all the rules, but
Yeah.
I wonder what is there beneath that
Yeah.
veneer. And so he said, I know that the COVID test is absolute meaningless.
Yeah.
It is not valid. It does not pick up uh, whether you are infectious or not, and that is what all of these measures are based on. That is
Yes.
what we're shutting down the economy over. What is leading to suicides, breaking up relationships, families, destroying people's futures, um, worsening their mental health.
Yeah.
And so there is no evidence that there is a dangerous virus out there and that people are just dropping like flies. All of that is
Yeah.
wrong, and the media are lying to us. And I just smiled and said, I'm on the exact same level as you.
Yeah.
And then I asked him, how are you on the same level with your wife in this topic? And he said, yes. Good for you.
So that's
Because I often feel lonely thinking this way.
yes. Yeah.
And but we still wore masks at church
Yeah.
because of this, I don't know, peer pressure, or what is it, that we feel we cannot be ourselves because we'll lose the privileges or the connections we already have. We'll lose the friends we have over something silly like this. So the mask is actually an instrument to help people become more uh, like, I don't know, rodents, you know, people who need to be controlled by leaders. They're like a muzzle, but they also help us to show each other that we
Yeah.
want to be rodents. I can't think of a better thing right now.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's terrible to call people animals, but to be
It's a metaphor. I mean, similarly, again, you don't mean they literally are rodents. You
right,
just mean
right.
they like it's like so it's fine. It's fine.
Okay, good. Because I was just thinking of the Nazis
So
called.
some people will take it as again like be like, oh, you can't use those terms or whatever. But like again, if people look beyond their own like being offendedness and actually just look at the metaphor or simile, then
Okay.
they'll understand that it's just there to describe a scenario. It's not there to actually call people that thing.
Yeah, let's just say people want leadership rather than autonomy. And so when they wear their mask, they're showing to everyone else that that is what they want, that is their position, and they will kind of put pressure on other people. And therefore we have this herd mentality phenomenon, which is destructive. It's a huge weakness in mankind. So a
Yep.
mask is a symbol that where you show other people that you are buying the propaganda, even if you are not convinced by it and have your doubts. And you know, even though your critical thinking is active and working, you are showing people that you are allowing them to decide over you, and therefore you are making it normal, and everyone else will feel this pressure to go along, whether they're convinced or not.
Yeah.
And that is a terrible weakness of people.
Yeah.
On the other hand,
What's
in a
yeah.
protest, you are showing people that you're against it. That's why going onto the street is so powerful. Even though you're just sometimes taking a walk, you know, you don't have to fight the police or
Yeah.
smash windows or anything like that. Just by
Yeah.
being outside and you know, taking a risk and showing that you are being undermined, that you feel like the government has gone too far,
Yeah.
that is a symbol that will
Yes.
give others courage to do the same. And then there's a mass phenomena there as well. It's just sad that things need to get so bad for people to reach a critical point where they will say enough is enough. And I guess the people who have been protesting are right, and I'll join them now. But you need certain critical people to start the movement, and then others will have enough courage to follow along.
Again, like we discussed last week, it's very difficult because I've been getting again about the tests and the validity of the tests, and how even before talking to you, I was like, well, we all kind of know they're not as accurate or completely inaccurate, depending on what we've read or perceive, than maybe we're being told. A lot of people already know that they're pretty wishy-washy sometimes. That it has to be done right or whatever, blah blah blah. But again, the key factor is for me is if again we can't know the difference. So again, let's say there is a virus, because there's evidence for both sides. There's evidence, there's all these deaths and scenarios. It's happening. Again, it's there. And then there are evidence against, where again, the testing and the control and the masks and everything. And it's like they're using, or the concept of using a mask stops other people from being infected. I would always rather choose that than not. And it may make me a bit of a sheep, but like, I feel very strongly that making that choice is, again, for me, even though it gives up a lot of freedoms, under the guise, or not the guise, that's the wrong word, under the perspective that it's saving lives or could save lives, is important to me. But again, it's completely conflicted, because what you just said there, very important about the mental health and the suicide, and the loss of jobs, and like the devastation that is being caused as a result of a lockdown. Does it outweigh the lives that have been lost through COVID? And it's such a moral dilemma that, again, I don't think there's any right or wrong, because we can't know or can't make that judgment call individually. We can't know as just an individual who isn't out there amongst it, or has every bit of data, like every person that's going to lose a job, or every person that's going to die as a result, whether from COVID or other related things. We don't know. We can't have all that data. Therefore, whichever side you pick on, or whatever fall on, you're not right or wrong. You're just a different camp.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's again, this is that whole illusion of choice thing. This is the division that is created between being right and wrong is actually, again, my opinion, false in itself, because we can't know. There's no way to know which one's right or wrong. Therefore, we have to just do what we believe is best and not judge other people for making their choice to pick whichever side they want. In terms of being, because like that's one of the biggest issues, is that a lot people will be like, oh, conspiracy theory, blah blah blah, or oh, following the crowd, and it's like that's actually just creating division. That in itself is probably what an overarching new world order or governments would actually rather have. They'd rather have that chaos, that division, at the end of the day, as well as the slavery and the following what they want us to do. So I've struggled very much with this whole scenario, because again, choice, which is really cool because it does relate to what we're talking about, of which way to go. And I think it just comes down to personal opinion, like, and doing what we feel is best. Because if at some point it turns out that actually it was a complete hoax and there's somehow it is all just fraud, I'll put up my hands and go, oh crap, like whoops, and be way more skeptical, not cynical, but skeptical of stuff. But right now, I'm at a loss to what to do most of the time when it comes to this thing, so I just do what I feel is best.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that. I love how we're circling back to making choices. And
Yeah, good on topic.
I'm also comforted that you, I don't know how aware you were, but you also called people animals.
Yeah,
But you,
the herd sheep mentality. Yeah,
right.
that's a classic one. Yeah.
So it is pretty normal for us to sometimes compare ourselves with animals.
Yeah.
It's just some choices might be less accepted than others.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? We do like we call people like stags or lions or skunks if they like whatever. We do tend to use animals a lot in.
I just didn't like me using rodents because I think those are sometimes used by radical groups like the Nazis
Yeah,
when they
genocidal.
got Germans to think of Jews as dirty
Yes.
animals who are better off
Yeah.
being killed because they're a pest. So yeah,
It's
it can have that connection as well.
even though it's not meant. Yeah. Again, it's
Yeah.
it's intention. People need to understand when we're having these conversations that if we use these again symbols, there's no malice or like no malice behind it. It's just a way to describe what we view is going on.
And I like how you said we don't need to, or it's not healthy to put each other down if we disagree on something. You know, if we have a different, if we make a different decision.
Yeah.
Because it is good to make a decision. Obviously, you need information first before you can make any decision. And I love how you are open to listening to both sides. You know, a lot of people will even not allow others to speak about alternative perspectives because they're afraid of the consequences of just becoming an outsider, I guess, of leaving the herd. There is a lot of pressure to just go along and be accepted.
What I wanted to say about again this choice and the again going to the COVID scenario. Why isn't there a vote? This is what I don't understand about democracy and um, modern governments. Is like we implement and vote for a government to come into play, and then that's it. That's done. Why aren't there local and um, national votes on things like this? Like, why couldn't there just be okay, this is the options we have. We have a herd immunity scenario, and we have a isolation until we can find vaccine type scenario, and then maybe a few other ones that I'm not familiar with, and then put to a vote. Like just like literally, it. I don't understand how that's not possible with something so serious.
Yeah.
And that way it avoids. I mean, it doesn't avoid the conflict. It still creates it, but it puts the power in the people's hands. And maybe that's an illusion. Again, this is going back to what we're going full circle here. But maybe that's an illusion because we think we're making. Are we? What was the study she used? She used again. Go if you're listening, go watch the link to the TED Talk. It's amazing. It's the honoring the difference of responsibility. That was it. It was it was a very emotional thing to use, but it was like when parents have to choose between turning off a life machine that's keeping a child alive. So that you've got a newborn child, is the example she uses, and the doctor comes in and says you can either keep them on life support and they're going to be in a vegetative state for the rest of their lives, and like completely vegetated, not even like conscious or anything really, or we can just turn off the life support and see if they can pull through, but then likely pass away in a couple of days. And that's the Western way of doing things, I think it was. And then the Europe, was it France or something? I think it was she referenced, where actually it's the doctor's choice. The doctor is the one who decides whether it's whether the patient, child, stays on life support or gets turned off. And she just discusses the differences in that. And I wonder, we look for, or I, with what I was saying, look for a scenario where there is a broader aspect of choice. But then the responsibility is then on us. We take the responsibility, and there's emotions like that are self attacking potentially. After that, like she was talked about how parents, when they made the choice, were very more like had negative responses for a lot longer, like, oh, what if?
Yeah.
And I feel like I've been involved in murder and that kind of stuff. Those kind of thoughts and behavior, like beliefs or emotions or whatever. And then the others were able to process and get through the scenario on average easier. And so from a democratic point of view, going back to that what I was talking about, who knows, like taking that responsibility on, and then as a country making the wrong choice, would we people be more devastated if things turned out really bad by choosing, let's say, choosing the herd immunity, and like all of the people over like 70 just get wiped out by the virus? Mm-hmm. Again, if you believe that there's a virus. If that happened, then all that guilt and responsibility is on the people. Whereas if it's the government that makes that choice, then the responsibility is more on them. Again, I'm not that I have any conclusion to this discussion at the moment, but it's just things to think about in terms of, again, where choice lies and responsibility when big choices like this have to be made. It's very strange to me, to link back what I was saying, that we don't vote on it when it's a democratic choice.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up this point, especially the story with the life support. A less intense example is my little sister says for her, meat comes from the supermarket, and where it was before that, she doesn't even want to think about. So that's an example of not wanting responsibility for your way of life, let's say. And a lot of people just don't want to think about difficult questions, ethical questions, and pass them on to leaders, like political leaders. On the other hand, political leaders are not more qualified to make those decisions for us. And so we live with the consequences of them deciding for us. I believe some of them are well-intentioned, but I also don't think this is the way forward. So there are some countries like Switzerland where there is a lot more voting going on. I don't know, maybe twice a month even or so, on more local things, on smaller things. But yeah, in your country, in my country, in most countries probably, the government will just take power until the people decide that's too far and we want more of the power back. Yeah. But there's a great saying, I don't remember by who said, if voting made any difference, it would be illegal. There have been great studies showing that there is no correlation between what people want and what government does. But there is some correlation between what rich people want and what government does. So yeah, democracy is an illusion to a certain
yeah, in a general sense, because there are certain points in time when it does work, when the good people do come along and actually do make a difference in various cultures and stuff. But from a generalistic point of view, it doesn't seem to.
So protesting is the most democratic thing, or one of the most democratic things, I think.
Yeah. And yet again, often it doesn't make much of a difference. Mm-hmm. The protest it usually ends up having to be violent. Like, it's literally like you do 100,000 people or 1 million people walk through the streets of London or whatever, and they do that and they show that there's people that want change, or there's enough people that there should be another vote on this subject or whatever, but nothing else happens. It's like it goes on the news and it's like, yay, and it's good that people are. And again, don't get me wrong, it's important that people are protesting, because again, it's key to identity. If nothing else, it's important for us as individuals to have that right to protest and to protest because we're showing our identity and our beliefs. Like that's sharing that.
Yeah.
Uh,
But on
is
the
very
topic,
important.
but on the topic of violent protest, I'm not a fan of it, and I don't
Oh
think
yeah,
it's
me neither.
necessary to achieve something. So for one, it takes the legitimacy out of the movement, because
Yeah.
the thing you're trying to get rid of by protesting is violence. You know, right now,
Yes.
government oversteps their mandate, you could say, and is applying violence, even if it's like overdoing taxation. That's a form of violence as well.
Yeah.
There's structural violence going on, even if it's not like direct
Physical.
and imminent
Yeah.
and physical, right?
We always think of violence as a punch to the face or a broken leg
Yeah.
or whatever, or smashing a window, where again it's so much more than that.
I think it was Gandhi who said poverty is a form of violence. You know, poverty is not necessary. A lot of people have just accepted it as part of everyday life, but it's actually the result of either corruption or not doing enough. I think poverty could be prevented. It would just take more of a social collective movement. And Gandhi also showed us by example that non-violent protest can achieve something. It might hurt you more. It might take more time and effort and more people, but it's better than the alternative where a few people use violence to achieve something, because if people like that get into power, there'll be more of the same, and another illegitimate government. So that is not helpful in the long term.
Bingo. Yep, no, that's absolutely spot on. And again, from a 99% point of the time, I believe that. Definitely, again, the hard way, the long way of non-violence achieves better long-term results. But obviously, sometimes a revolution is needed.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes an uprising and an overthrowing, as long as then the power is put back to the people, and that's the problem. That's the problem, is that when that violent stuff happens, the power just goes back to the violent people that have their own agendas and their own selfishness and their own desire to control and take away choice.
Let's have an episode on this topic soon, because in my opinion, blockchain technology is a form of bringing power back to the people and making democracy more direct, because it is non-violent as far as I can tell, and it is not going against the current financial and political system. It is just creating something on the side that people...
Again, it's so different. It's not right, it's not wrong. It's just, again, it's different to give choice.
Right. We're giving the people an alternative where they are in charge of their own money, where there are no central banks who can just create more money and therefore decrease the value of your savings. But at least for Bitcoin and many other currencies, there is a max supply. There is a hard cap at 21 million. But let's get into that. How creativity rather than rebellion is better in the long term to build what you want rather than destroy what you don't want.
Love it. That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
All right, let's stop there.